Anger and hurt are two sides of the same coin, but we tend to have a preference for one or the other. There's one that tends to feel much more safe for our nervous system. And what we end up doing is sort of shaping our lives and our behavior around leaning more into one of them and away from another. And there's nothing wrong with that, but we end up kind of lopsided internally, and we have to strive very hard to kind of maintain this lopsided balance. We have to strive very hard to never find a situation where we might have to use our anger, or to never admit to anyone on the flip side that we feel hurt or vulnerable. And that can take a lot of energy. It can actually be very painful. And so I want to try with this video to bring some consciousness to this, so we can start to notice that in ourselves, and then start to actually balance things out again by getting more in touch with our anger or our hurt, whichever one it might be. So these emotions tend to protect each other. Anger generally tends to be the protector. Very often we can feel hurt, like helpless, weak, like we've been betrayed, or lonely, any of these kinds of emotions. And there's a kind of anger energy of some kind of anger emotion that comes in. Again, this could be resentment, could be frustration, irritation, or it could just be a kind of, our anger informs our kind of life force. It could just be this kind of pull yourself together, I'm strong, let's do this kind of energy. That's actually protecting something more vulnerable or doubtful underneath. And you may recognize this. Let me give you some examples. Like maybe there's situations, or some people who someone has betrayed them or is obviously overstepping a boundary or mistreating them in some way. Someone's really just taking the piss in some way, and that person feels, on the receiving end, feels really uncomfortable and feels hurt, might go to a friend and be sad, say I'm feeling sad, and they're crying and going to their friend, but it never really occurs to them, it doesn't feel safe to go like, actually, hey, no, stop, I don't like this, I don't want this, and actually respond with a sort of anger energy of their own. It's because they've been taught based on their own childhood experiences. Again, this is all completely innocent. We get very heavily conditioned often that our anger is bad and wrong, that if we stand up to people, because we tried to stand up to our caregivers, say, and maybe they would treat, they didn't like it, they would send us to our room, or they would ignore us. And so we learned that, love's going to get withdrawn if I get angry. And so later on in life, we almost don't have access to that option. That our nervous system goes, no, that's not that's not an option for you. We're not going to do that. On the flip side, there's people who grew up in environments where showing weakness wasn't allowed. There's a famous, or sadness or hurt or helplessness or whatever. There's a famous clip of Hillary Clinton, or I remember reading about it in a book, where she was giving a speech and she was proud of the fact that her mother, as a child, Hillary was like, she shed a tear or something like that. And her mother, sort of quickly dressed, it's like, hey, not in this house. No one's going to cry in this house. Pull yourself together. Really quite aggressively, told her to pack that in. And Hillary, I guess, needs to watch my channel, because Hillary Clinton, because she thinks that's something that really contributed to her personality. And in a sense, I'm not saying it didn't, I'm sure in a sense experience of this can give us a kind of strength, but it's a very brittle, fragile strength that comes at a great cost, because the cost is that we have to disconnect ourselves from a whole part of ourselves. We have to be very inauthentic. We have to hide our parts of us that feel sad or feel weak or helpless. And the reason we hide those parts is because we feel like, well, if I allow the helplessness, if I allow the weakness, the feeling of weakness and helplessness, then that means I am that. It means I am weak. It means I am helpless. But this is not the truth. Your feelings don't say anything about you in any absolute sense. There's just, all it is a message from the system going, help. Something's up. Just because you feel helpless does never mean you are helpless. And if you stay there and sit with that helplessness and hold it for a moment or two, it'll soften and you'll actually feel more capacity afterwards. The vulnerability actually turns into strength when it's fully allowed. The same goes for our anger. If we're repressing our anger, we're repressing our life force, our strength. We're repressing what lets us be ourselves in the world. And so when we integrate our anger, when we actually allow ourselves to go there, that strengthens us. It's not a sign that you're an angry person or that you're aggressive or that you're bad or that you should be ashamed for standing up for yourself. This is what we just get conditioned, misled to believe, and our nervous system just follows that cue because we were so threatened when we were young. But there are huge capacities and treasures to be unlocked by sort of rebalancing this imbalance in the favor either of anger or of hurt. And they go together because, like I said, one protects the other. If you stay with your anger long enough, if there's anger coming up and you're feeling it, and you're saying, no, this is not fair, fuck you, no, and you're feeling it in the body. I've got videos on how to do that if you type in repressed anger into my channel. I've got lots of detailed videos. Very often it suddenly turns into tears. Suddenly, you break down, the energy of the anger dissipates, and this vulnerability, this beautiful vulnerability, and tears and sadness comes to the surface. And it's such a relief to feel that, in my experience at least. And vice versa, having gone your entire life just always being, always sort of feeling comfortable in those more vulnerable, sad, hurt feelings, but never in the strength of anger. Actually, when you start, I've had this with many clients, particularly, as an example, like women sort of in their 40s, 50s, they've just had a divorce. They've got all this pent up anger from their life that they've never been allowed to express or acknowledge. And when they start to connect to that, it feels really good for them. There's this strength that they never knew they had that they can start to tap into. It feels empowering. It feels like, yeah, I can be myself here in the world. It's a really beautiful thing. And in my own life, my own journey was really transformational with anger. I repressed anger a lot. And I remember in my first forays into this kind of somatic emotional work, there was just lots of tears, lots of hurt, and there was no anger. And eventually the anger started coming up as my nervous system felt safer to go there. And it was so powerful. Just like so much tension left from the body once I started to actually be able to allow that anger. Because holding that in all the time was what was making me so anxious and tense that I had to drink every day. Then you actually, you can just feel the anger in your body. And just to let you know, it's that angry behavior and the emotion of anger are two separate things. So we're acknowledging and feeling the anger. We're not behaving angrily in the world. Through that, the tension relaxes in the body. I could be much more connected to other people. A lot of my addictions softened. At that point, I'd stopped drinking, but I'd been binging chocolate every day. I remember this. And when I started getting in touch with the anger, over the weeks and months of really feeling into it, the addiction, the chocolate, instead of binging it every day, it would be every other day. Then it was every 3 days. And now I barely eat sugar at all. Like once a month, maybe I have something sugary, and I immediately regret it because it just doesn't agree with me anymore. So that's a little something about anger and hurt. There's a lot more to say about why and how we came to be in this state where we've repressed one or the other. You can look up my videos on protector parts. But I think this will do for now. Again, you can check out my other videos for more deets or my website for working with me one-on-one if you want some help exploring these patterns in yourself. Bye.